everyone, or at least most people you know, are going to tell you how iconic Super Mario Bros. Is because it changed gaming in one way or another. Some might say it brought back gaming from the brink of destruction, and others might just tell you that it was their childhood favorite, but whether that reasoning be objective or subjective, it's all quite valid. And that all comes back to the quality of this original title. You see, when looking at this objectively, yes, Nintendo did bring us back from the great video game crash of the early 80s. This happened because consoles like the Atari 2600 and the Intellivision continuously put out crap in North America and for quite frankly all over the world, and the shovelware was overtaking the quality games, and so consumers started to distrust these companies and started to sort of dip out of the interest of gaming, at least as a home console could be considered because the arcades were still quite prevalent at this time. So in the early 80s, Nintendo came in with a plan that would save us all. The NES aimed to be more than a video game console. It sort of put itself out there as almost a toy of sorts, selling with Rob in the United States about 3 years after the original Famicom came out, and this was a really interesting decision. The launch of the NES was so incredibly successful in North America because of one game. That wasn't Duck Hunt, that wasn't Ice Climbers. All of those games are fine, but Super Mario Bros. Changed the entire landscape of gaming itself. Nintendo waited to launch this system in North America until 3 years after the original hardware came out in Japan under the name Family Computer System, or the Famicom. The Famicom did not launch with Super Mario Bros. The Super Famicom at that time was actually starting to move towards a floppy disk-based system instead of that cartridge type vibe, but once it came out in North America and the NES was the smash hit it was, mostly due to the game it launched with, everything changed. The NES packaged itself with Rob in order to really sell that it was a toy, and then boom, games were back. They also put this seal of quality on their games so that consumer trust could begin to rise again for video games, and at the center of that seal of quality was Mario Bros. We knew that Nintendo wouldn't stray us in the wrong direction, so understanding and consumers knowing that they were going to get a quality product that at least worked and did what it advertised was huge, especially at that time. A lot of people subjectively call this game one of the greatest games of all time, right up there with the best nostalgia can offer. Super Mario Bros. Is definitely a very good game, but the memories some hold with it definitely elevate it to another level. And honestly, contrary to popular belief, this is also the case with me. You see, I grew up with this game in a way, I guess you could say. When I was younger, I used to play a lot of retro games occasionally, most of like SNES type vibes and all that kind of stuff, mainly the original handful of Mario titles like Super Mario Bros. 3 and World over and over again. But when I was introduced to Super Mario, this, base ass Super Mario, I was entranced. I remember practicing for hours and hours, and my cousin and I would switch off playing, because at that time I had no idea about the warps. And by myself, as a kid, without the warps, I made it to about level 4, until later on my cousin figured out the warps. And once that was figured out, it was all over. We continued to play the game for years and years to come, and just about every single year I replay this game. So yeah, I have a heavy amount of nostalgia for it, but I honestly think that as a child, I was so picky with these types of games. I was either all in or all out. You guys know with Ocarina of Time. And so, the fact that this game grabbed me as much as it did, I think is a true testament. I was probably around 10 when I first played this game. 2013. We had definitely better experiences, right? More modern games. I grew up with the Wii and the PlayStation 2 and 3 and stuff like that, and so I definitely had grown accustomed to a different style of game, but going back to this, the core mechanics of it hold up so damn well, and are so easily transferred from one Mario game to another that I understood everything going on, and I absolutely adored it. So this game was monumental for a few reasons. First of all, it created modern-day platforming. It created the physics to follow as well. And think about it, because at this time, we went from this to this. I mean, this was an unbelievable jump in quality. It also showed the power of the mascot character. Let's talk about Mario for a second. This guy is what made this game so iconic. Yes, basically same vibe as Jumpman from Donkey Kong, so we had a blueprint. We had a blueprint of Koopa shells and jumping and stuff like that, but we did not have the character of Mario himself yet. The fact that they went all in on this red little plumber man, and they think about Mario to this day. Your grandma knows about Mario. Your friend who doesn't give a shit about video games knows a lot about Mario. We just got a Mario movie like last year. It created one of the most recognizable figures of all time. Mario is the mascot of Nintendo, and he went from this little 8-bit baddie to the conglomerate of a huge success that he is now. So the power of the mascot character, I also think, cannot be understated, because you think Nintendo and you think Mario. And without this game to coincide with the launch of the NES, we never would have had that. This isn't even the first game that would come out on the Famicom system, right? So when we had the Famicom 3 years before, we had Ice Climbers, Duck Hunt, things like that, the baseball games, very simple sports titles, but they waited to the perfect opportunity in North America, and they released this absolute baddie of a system with an iconic game to follow, and that game has gone on to see oodles of success. Also, the fact that it's still played to this day is a huge testament to the quality of it, because most NES games should never be touched again, in my opinion. As this is a game I play about once a year, I feel like I have quite a bit of experience with it. You know, I often mess around in it, see what's going on, just jump in for a couple levels and jump out, right? It can be an incredibly frustrating game. It's tough, it's hard as nails, but at the end of the day, it's so damn iconic because of the gameplay. And let's just dive in the gameplay, because I'm excited to talk about that aspect. At the time, that I was not around, but at the time, the best things we had platformer-wise was probably Donkey Kong, and some other Ghosts and Goblins came around at the same time, so that was also pretty good, but that was on an arcade system, so, like, was it as good as this game? Probably not. So, at this time, the physics of Mario's damn jump was iconic. The fact that you could change momentum by running and jumping was huge. The fact that you could switch directions mid-air was insane, because if you think about original Donkey Kong, wherever you're pressing that D-pad to jump, that is where you're gonna go. But not with Mario Bros. With Mario Bros, you have so much freedom in the air, and the access, the physics, everything is so well done that it holds up today incredibly well. Sometimes he's a bit slippery, I will say that, but that's something we can absolutely forgive, because it basically allowed a little bit of leeway with Mario instead of having these harsh restrictions on what you can and can't do platforming-wise, right? It really created what we know as the modern-day platformer, and really did a lot to lay the blueprint down. It also was kind of first-of-its-kind side-scrolling game. At the time, we were used to arcade-style games, right? Single screen, couple screens, things like that. But if you think about the idea of a side-scroller, that was pretty new. Again, Ghosts and Goblins, similar time frame, did come out, and it honestly had better scrolling, but for a home console, this was insane. This game, you could go for so long in one direction. It had so many secrets, so many different rooms to check out, so many things to see at all times. You're always going to run from left to right, and you can't go back. That's the one thing. This game is a little tough because you can't go back, but they figured that out in different iterations, and they did the absolute best they could with the NES hardware. Now, this game doesn't look as good as something like Mario Bros. 3, but that's because they didn't know how to, like, basically with those games, from my understanding, what they did is they got into the cartridge itself and put a different sort of hardware chip in there in order to push the NES and the games to a different level, right? That's why we got games that look as good as Super Mario Bros. 3. But on the base hardware of the NES, running exclusively off the box itself and not really much of the cartridge, this is about as good as we could possibly get from this type of system. They pushed it to its absolute limits with the damn launch game. That's crazy. That's really crazy. And like I said, it led to more evolution down the line with better looking games and things of that sort. So thank you for Mario Bros. 3, because that definitely is, I think, the best Mario game on the system. But the blueprint was laid with Super Mario Bros. And that's a blueprint that they have really not strayed from, even in the, recent years. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, if you go back and you hearken to the very base of that game, it is still very similar to what we saw in this original title. They packed secrets and secrets and secrets here with different rooms that you could go in to just collect a couple coins, things that you could exploit, right? With how speedrunners take advantage of the small glitches in this game to absolutely get like to get on that one pixel on the warp pipe or on the wall in order to completely bypass areas of the game. They also like just have all these sort of like dead zones and some of the piranha plants and things like that. And those flaws are what kind of makes this game special. It seems like every few years somebody finds out something brand new that the community had no idea about. I mean, there's a whole glitched level here that you can access by like going in some specific I honestly don't remember how you do it, but it's just like everything's backwards, it's underwater, there's a bunch of enemies floating around, blocks that aren't supposed to be in the right place, and that's because of the code of the game itself like wrote this other level, I guess, like like so many secrets within this game. This game was filled with wonder. It allowed you to explore everything and to really see what they had to offer. Now, you had to do it, of course, in this arcade-style time frame, and sometimes you did want to do it as fast as possible, but the variety in the choice of gameplay there is beautiful. The fact that you can sort of take your time with these games, or you can absolutely bull rush to the very end, is crazy, crazy quality. And something very clever that they did with the warp zones is they made them kind of intuitive to a degree, at least that first one. So in World 1-2, when you're seeing those platforms rise above the level, it makes sense almost that I think I can get up there. Now, in 4-2, it's a little bit more complicated because if you do the same thing, you're obviously going to get to Warp Pipe 5. Warp Pipe 5 is not what you, like, skipping just a couple levels, like, is not what we want to do. But this one is way more complicated because you have to, like, hit these invisible blocks, you have to have Big Mario. I think there is a way to do it with Baby Mario, but I don't really know how you do that. There's all these things that have to line up for you to hit that second one, and so it feels like they really made this game to be played over and over again and to be fully explored and just kind of exploited in a way. And if there's one thing about video game players, it's that they love to feel like they've done something like under the nose of the game. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that was the special sauce of Tears of the Kingdom, was like, oh, like, I figured this out in a way that the game doesn't want me to do. So it's like when you find these little areas, you're like, oh my god, this is just for the developers. Like, how did I figure out about this? And then it becomes this whole thing, like in the friend group, on the playground when you were a kid. And it's sick. It's very, very cool. It's probably one of the best parts about Mario Bros. Is just how creative it is in a way. The play styles, the variety of different things you can do in this game cannot be understated, and I know I might be repeating myself a little bit here, but I just think we need to drive home how fucking insane it was that they basically came up with a new genre of game, essentially, by really elaborating on their blueprint, I guess, for this game, which could be considered Donkey Kong, right? Okay, so let's talk about the enemies now. The enemies in this game are insane, right? You have the Goombas, easy to understand, you bop on their head, whatever. Then we take it up a notch, we got the Koopas. Koopas are super interesting because you bop them, and then you're like, oh, why? Well, I'll just hit them again, maybe I need to hit them twice. And the shell, bang. You know what I mean? Like, that's such a thing that we've had for years now that we don't even think about that. But to design that type of gameplay at that time, absolutely insane. The jumping Koopas, the iterations of the enemies are so simple, but they make so much sense. And the progression of difficulty in this game, like, granted, it's a hard game and it kicks it up quite a bit in the, I would say probably about World 4, it gets kind of insane. Then you have Bowser. Bowser's the big bad, right? Bowser was a original character at this time, and there's a variety of ways to beat him, but usually the best and most surefire way to do so is be Tiny Mario and run under him when he's jumping. Then, of course, you can blast him with the fireball. So there's just kind of different ways to play this game, which I really love, and I think that's what makes it so special, especially if you look at it as compared to the games that were coming out at the time. On top of that, the power-ups. We just mentioned the Fire Flower, but there's this mushroom that powers you up. And it makes so much sense that you can take another hit now because you're twice the size. Like, the way they did things, power-up-wise, it was so intuitive. Then the Fire Flower is one of the most iconic Mario power-ups at this point that we've had in almost every single Mario game, 2D and 3D alike at this point, because it is so versatile. It can be used in so many different ways, and even back then, in this very first game, you understand exactly how to use it, and it's just super intuitive. This entire game is so damn intuitive, and again, that's what makes it fucking special. Let's talk about the music really quickly. The music sort of gets repetitive, it sort of repeats itself, but it's absolutely iconic. There's nothing more iconic than Mario music, and that is no different here. They've obviously improved it in further iterations, but that original World 1-1 theme is amazing. That is the most video game level theme I have ever heard in my life. It's fantastic, it's nostalgic, it's beautiful, it's really well done, and they crammed all of that quality into the tiniest file size. It's damn impressive. The game holds up incredibly well to this very day. It's a game I look forward to playing every single year, and I'm probably gonna stream it pretty soon. And hey, I'm gonna have more streams soon. I know I said I was gonna stream once a week. It hasn't happened. I'm gonna try. I'm really gonna try, okay, guys? I've got school again, so it's tough. But thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about Mario Bros. Down in the comments below if you've noticed the quality of this video. And you're like, God damn, Josie, it's looking fantastic. I have a new lens on this camera, and it's fucking beautiful. It's a cinematography lens. I just love it so much. And, we out here, chat, so thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you all, and I will see you in that video. It's a banger. Stay with me, chat. It's a vibe, and it's a good time, and I will see you over there. Goodbye.